One. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adwikda.
This is Merps. Hope you guys all had a great week in the arena. Got a little bit of news to share with you guys and some interesting implications for the future of arena, right?
Yeah. Mike Denai, one of the developers of Hearthstone, was in Hafu's channel last week and dropped this. He said, "Vicious Fledgling will not be in the arena next patch."
Well, I think he said it in or not as definite
In
terms.
a less definite term, like it probably will not be in the arena in the next
Yeah,
patch.
yes. And that was basically it, right? It was a very short comment that they didn't go into much detail about, but essentially he's saying he, Vicious Fledgling will probably not be in the arena next patch.
So if you guys remember, next patch, whenever next patch is, we don't know an actual time, but that's when the synergy picks are supposed to be leaving.
Yeah, so synergy picks will be gone. That has been confirmed. From this, it seems as if it's not just the synergy picks going away. There will be potentially other changes, other balancing changes to the arena, which is interesting. And I can't say it's totally unexpected, right? They've been sort of tinkering and balancing the arena for quite a few months now. And if they're going to balance it again by removing synergies, they might as well kind of further balance it, in the way that they feel is appropriate.
Yeah. So what do you think they're gonna do? What do you think is going to happen besides synergy picks going out and vicious fledgling going out? Like that can't be the only changes.
See, so here's the thing about the vicious fledgling removal from the arena, right? Even though it's kind of similar to what they have done previously, for example, with Flame Strike and Vicious Fledgling, they sort of nerfed the offering rate by 50%,
Mm-hmm.
or with cards like Purify and Snipe, they took those away from the arena. This is different though. This is like one of the first targeted cards to just be completely removed, and not just in sort of the massive sweep, like the broad sort of banning of cards that they did that one time, right? I see this as sort of like whether by the stats or whether by the community reaction, them saying we're going to target a
Well,
few
well, not by
cards
the
and
stats.
take
We
them.
know what the stats of vicious fledgling. It doesn't
True,
win.
yeah.
Like it's not one of the like highest winning cards that exist in the arena.
Right. If you're taking by stats, then something like a Primordial Drake, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be very quote problematic, and then they would potentially remove that. So I don't love this, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
Well, I mean, okay, so they really need they're removing more than just vicious fledgling. Like they're not going to just touch vicious fledgling. That doesn't make much sense. They've already nerfed it. They're not going to like we're going to remove all synergy picks and vicious fledgling is also going to get knocked down a peg.
Yeah,
That's not going to happen. They're going to remove more cards. There may be more problematic cards getting removed. Primordial Drake may be gone. Who knows? Bone Mare may be gone. Death Knights may be gone. We don't know what they're removing, but I can almost assure you that they're going to be removing more than just Vicious Fledgling if they get around to removing Vicious Fledgling. And on top of what I'm really hoping is they bring some of the cards back also, now that they're no longer problematic, and maybe kind of do like a light change where they reevaluate some of the cards they've taken away before, and maybe take away a few new cards, and just kind of push it out there. And whether it's good or bad, it won't be as bad as synergy picks, right? Like take this opportunity to be like, look, we're doing something that everybody's gonna like because no one likes synergy picks in the arena, so it's all going to be good and that affects every single draft. So instead we're going to also do this bunch of other stuff, so even if we screw up, it's not gonna be that bad. Like its effect is going to be very minor compared to the whole synergy picks affecting every draft going away. So it's kind of a good, like, almost like free pass for them to try to do a little bit of tweaking, update their system a little, and then not get a lot of pushback just because everyone's going to be so happy that synergy picks are going to be gone.
Yeah, I agree. It is a good opportunity for them to be like, well, things are just going to get better. Not no matter what they do,
No matter
but
what they do.
right.
Like if all
This is
they're
not a
doing is
challenge.
banning like a handful of cards or like putting a handful of banned cards back in the arena, they can do everything completely wrong and it will be better as long as they also get rid of the synergy picks.
Right. Uh, I guess my problem with this is assuming that other stuff will happen, right? Assuming that other stuff will happen. Um, I do want to know their thought process behind it because for us, it's really about the thinking behind the implementation,
But you mean
right? Like
behind
the
each
process.
banned card?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
behind like why they ban it, and if it is just based on sort of community response, once again, I have been heavily against that, right?
Well, because
Um,
I mean, you guys see like whenever they change the cards for constructed, they have a little explanation about like, oh, this is limiting this design space, or oh, we thought this card was doing this, and so we're changing it. They did it in the last round. They've done it for a few rounds of these we'll call them like mid-season nerfs
yeah,
that affect constructed, and they haven't done it in the arena much ever. I want to say ever, but maybe they did in the first initial ban wave, or maybe they just gave a general explanation of things there. But obviously, it'd be nice to see why they banned it. But whenever, like, their Blizzard's in a tough spot because if they explain why they banned something, they're probably going to get it wrong, and it's going to be really easy for anyone to look at it and be like, wait. But that card is even more what you say here, and that's not banned.
true, right? They do open themselves up to that critique or
Yeah.
criticism,
And like just
and
see what they've done before. Like they're going to get it like not exactly right. That's just going to happen. It's going to they haven't banned massively in a while. So the first time they do this, it's going to be an iterative process. It's not going to be like, "Oh, we do this one ban thing and then we're done."
right. Another thing I'm kind of worried about is at this point, I don't have too much faith in their. Was that convincing? Did that sound good? But I don't have too much faith in their testing process, right? And it makes me worried if big changes are coming. Sort of, I'd love for us to have a test server, right, or like a PTR server or something. That's not going to happen. I don't see it happening anytime soon, and it just worries me that basically, the main game, the main server, will be essentially be like a test server for at least a few weeks, and that's in the sort of the worst case scenario if like things go completely wrong, like with the synergy picks, and otherwise, we're going to have months and months of something that is potentially, slightly to moderately problematic.
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking about something completely different here.
Yeah.
If they do what we know they're doing so far, which is to ban a couple cards, that's not going to like I said, even if they get it wrong, that's not going to affect things. That's going to affect things in a very minor way. It's if they also said, "Oh, we're getting rid of the synergy picks and we're going to institute curve picks." Right? Like that's when everything can go off the rails and you need to make sure you've like done your testing and you like run the specifics by people who know what they're doing. And Blizzard has confirmed I fully believe, let's just not say they've confirmed, let's say they've everything that we've seen from them so far has shown that arena does not have that kind of testing going on, and that they're
Right.
not, at least they haven't yet implemented a test server for it. So if they implement those, then things can go off the rails. If they're just like banning a couple cards, they've done that before, we've seen the effects. Even if they ban a whole lot of cards, it's not going to affect the arena that much in that negative of a way. It may just be like, oh, why did you do that? That just limits the number of cards we get to play with. But it doesn't have the whole like every draft every game is affected thing, unless they do something that affects every draft every game, right? That's why 7.1 was so bad. That's why synergy picks were so bad. It's because they were trying to do something and they don't have a good enough grasp on their own game, and they don't have a good enough testing system to vet these changes before it comes out. So if it misses, it misses. And they've been very slow. Although, to be fair, if they pull off these changes, let's say like next week, that would be like almost 50% faster than the last time that they screwed up this way. and they pulled the changes back eventually, right? Like last time they did spell extra offering rates for spells that didn't cover weapons. And it was very obvious from like day one that that was a stupid thing to do. Like warriors, like right, like that's just someone
Yeah.
didn't think that one through. And it took literally 3 months for that change to happen to the arena. So they're getting faster. I mean, they've set a really low bar for themselves, but this would come what, like 2 weeks into the synergy pick? I mean, sorry, 2 months into the synergy picks thing instead of 3 months. So it's better, I guess. But
Yeah. Look, it doesn't inspire much faith, but I will say, so these co-ops that Mike Dene has with Hafu, I think they're a very good thing, right? It's sort of it's a bridge between a very highly, respected member of the arena community and very well-known streamer, and between one of the developers. And I think we kind of need to have this, right? Because currently we don't have many lines of communication between the community and
well, I don't think that does anything. He's just playing a game with a streamer. Like, yeah, it looks nice, but this is all like things that look nice. What would be nice is if he outlined the exact thing of what he's going to do ran it by Hafu, right? Like, that's
right,
very different than what he did that we know of. Like, I
right,
don't
which
think
is
these
like,
streams like are helpful at all besides image wise, which is like a publicity thing, not like a real game balance thing. Like, I don't.
yeah.
What does that accomplish? Like, you seem to like these things. What does it actually accomplish?
I mean, I'm just hoping that something like this, acts as something of a bridge. And if, for example, if we have any concerns or complaints, like at least someone like Hafu, who is very good at the game and very committed to the game, has an avenue to directly reach one of the developers, right? And we don't have to just go through, Reddit posts or Blizzard forums or something like that.
I don't think the problem is that they don't like see the complaints. It's how seriously they take the complaints. It's very like they read every post, like not every post. They read every uploaded post on Reddit. Like Ben Brode has said that number of times. Fully believe them. They respond at a decently frequent rate to the ones that get major attention. Sometimes they even joke around inside of it, right? They look at their own forums. They have people whose entire jobs is to look at their forums and figure out what people are like thinking, and like that's all there. I don't think there's a lack of like any time, right? Even if we don't get response for months, we can always DM the developers. I'm sure they read them. Like they're not just like throwing them away. That's not the problem. That's never been the problem. The problem is what they do with that information. How much information they run by people who know what they're doing.
Yeah,
And
I think
that
that's fair.
and that isn't solved by doing a co-op with Hafu, or doing 100 co-ops with Hafu, or doing 100 co-ops with everybody. That's not solving the problem. It's not bad. I'm not saying like, oh, don't do that. I'm just saying like, don't look at it as even a step in the right direction for a solution. It's not a step at all. It's solving a different problem. It's solving
Yeah.
like, I don't know, the idea that maybe some people think that they don't care. Like, that shows that they're developers and they played this game. I don't know, but it doesn't really have much to do with game balance.
Yeah. Anyways, at this point, I think we'll just wait and see what happens. But personally, I've just been kind of, I don't know, like post 7.1 changes, and then all of the like the tweaks, like the micro adjustments, and just with the synergy picks recently, I'm whenever I know a change is happening, I'm just like very
Sphincter
nervous.
clutched.
Yeah, I'm very nervous. I'm very anxious because I know that essentially whatever change that they implement, we're gonna have for a while. And like I said, I don't exactly trust their internal testing process, and it's quite frustrating. Like if they do succeed this time, and I don't know exactly how to measure success because I don't know exactly what they're going to do. It will probably be like the first time in a long time. Um,
Well, they're gonna
have
get it
way-
right at some point, right? Like, you throw enough darts at the wall, one's gonna hit.
And I mean, it just seems to me like it could be avoided with like a PTR or something. But
That's
for now,
resources. And if you make
yeah,
a PTR, that's potentially, depending on how you look at it, could be less money for them if people start using the PTR instead of buying arena runs. Or like there's reasons that have nothing to do with making the game better
True. Yeah.
that
No, I
disfavor
think that's very
PTR.
fair.
Like this is not like we can say like, oh yeah, in an ideal world this will be better. And I totally agree that's how you should run a game. But they have other things they have interest in. I don't even know if they have the like power to make their own PTR. Like they probably need to get signed off by some like Blizzard corporate thing.
Sure. So I will say I do see this kind of comment thrown out occasionally when I mention an idea of like a PTR on stream, or I even see it in the chat right now. Some people throw out the idea no one would play a PTR, right? And I think that's
lie.
not true. You would actually have a very like
if you're saying that, you've obviously not like played Overwatch. Everyone plays the PTR. When the PTR comes out, like you see a drop in the server traffic of like the main servers. Like I think they're more afraid of the opposite of that. That if you make a PTR, it's gonna actually split the community.
Yeah, it will. And you will actually have the most hardcore people playing the PTR, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we will definitely play on a PTR. I would play it extensively actually, because I want to test it and I want to give feedback.
Oh, I would do the opposite. I would not play the PTR. I have my gold that I'm trying to build here. I got my card collection I'm trying to build here. PTR doesn't do any of that. I will look at the PTR and then I will make my comments, but I don't think I'm going to play it extensively. Like I'll check it out and then
I would definitely play it. I am willing to bet that people that are very invested in the arena, like Shady or Isher or Hafu, like they would test it out, right? They might not play on there like full time after that. I don't think they will, but they will definitely play it and offer commentary. So I think the interest is definitely there.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get on from this. This is all pure speculation. We don't know what Blizzard doing, but it's kind of interesting that they're going to do something. Like, we didn't know that they were going to do anything more than pull back the changes, to pull back the synergy picks, which is good enough for me. But it seems like they're going to try to do at least a little tinkering, maybe a lot of tinkering, and we'll see what happens when that drops. Next patch. Don't know when it is. I guess it must be, like, kind of soon, right? Because it was announced so long ago that, like, not formally announced, but, you know, it's leaked on Reddit, so to speak, by a developer. So not really leaked, just, like, stated. It's such a weird system they have going on right now. I would not be surprised if this patch hits on like Tuesday.
Yeah. All right. So we're just gonna wait for these supposed changes and cross our fingers, hope for the best.
All right. Let's talk about the real game, the Hearthstone game that people are playing.
The game. All right. So this week I wanted to talk about a topic that was brought up somewhat recently on stream, where someone asked me, look, I just began Hearthstone. I've only been playing for a little bit, and 9 classes seems like a lot to sort of take in at once, right? And these 9 classes have different, not only just different cards, they have different mechanics, sort of different skills necessary to master them. And this person asked, like, what should be the progression of classes that I pick up? Like, which ones do I start off with? And then not just like start off with, which we've talked about, like, how should I progress after that to fill out the rest of the classes? So I want to talk about generally what you want to do in this progression, and then I'll offer up sort of my suggestion. You know, if you are someone who has only been playing Hearthstone for a little bit of time and want to eventually cover all 9 classes, I'll offer my suggestion as to how I think you should go about doing that.
Okay.
So
So I just want to say we're bringing this back, right? Like we're pulling back, getting a really eagle's eye, satellite eye view of the whole process of being an arena player in Hearthstone. We had drilled down deep for the last couple of Lightforges, right? Like about like how to actually play the game, how to get your wins, how to make that difference between a win and a loss in these certain situations. That come up a lot, but still, it's not every game necessarily. This is more big picture, like quality of life stuff, and it really deals in, I think, like human limitation. And that's what I'm really focused on, because I know I'm a very limited person, like as a human being and what I'm capable of doing, maybe more so than most people on the basic stuff. But even if you're very good at being generally human and doing generally human things, like remembering things and learning things, even if you're like the best human, you are still not perfect. And so, while the best human could maybe just play whatever classes and synthesize all the things that they're learning in the proper way, real people can't do that. And so, the way I think everyone will recommend you to start is always with mage, because that's the first class. And then some people will like bring paladin into it, and I think that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
I think the way you start should be the two classes with the similar hero powers. It's mage and druid, mage and druid. Whenever possible, mage and druid. Because the way you play when you have a ping and when you don't is incredibly different. The way you turn plan, the way situations are to you. Like, remember, if you have, like we always say this, things with initiative take less skill than a minion on the board. Because whenever something happens, you can react to it, which means you don't have to predict the thing happening. And a lot of skill in the arena is predicting what thing is going to happen, or the odds of each thing's happening, and playing the thing to the highest odds. That's a lot of the skill in the arena once you get past the basic, like, how do I trade on the board efficiently, right? Or like, let's know when to set up 2-turn lethal. But a lot of it really is about predicting your opponent's move once you get a couple steps further. So when you have something with initiative, you have a bailout. You can be bailed out on every single next turn at some cost, right? At some cost of tempo, at a cost of health if you're the druid, but you got it. And that makes it a much easier experience for you while you learn all the parts of the game. Just because otherwise mage and druid are pretty, especially mage nowadays, like they're pretty normal classes.
Yeah, it's definitely not the OP sort of ruler of the meta that it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I think what Adapta says is very true. You want to pick up, first, like, if you just started the game, you want to pick up the classes that have similarities, right? You can just say, I'm going to only pick mage, and that's fine. However, the game will just like sometimes not offer you mage. It's crazy. So realistically, you need to have about 3 classes, right? Like 3 classes that have a similarity, a common theme that ties everything together that you can sort of build around. I totally agree with Adukta that you should start off with mage and druid. These are just very sort of standard classes, right?
And druid's good now too. It used to be that whenever we had druid, people were like, but druid sucks, and we're like, no, druid's totally like a mid-tier class. Now it's like everyone's like, oh yeah, druid's good too. Mage is maybe a mid-tier class, but same deal.
Same deal. And the ping is something extremely important, and you will get you will learn to play around the fact that you always have 1 damage available for 2 mana, and you can use it as sort of a crutch. You can use it as sort of a bailout, right? Because when you always have that available, you don't need to turn plan as much. You don't need to have as advanced of an understanding of board and tempo, because you won't get yourself in situations as often where they get like a good trade and suddenly they have like a 5-1, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a mage and a druid, that's fine. You spend 2 mana, you get rid of it, you're still okay. With other classes, that 5-1 might just be backbreaking, right?
With other classes, you may lose 5 tempo / card advantage. With mage and druid, you're only going to lose 1 tempo, because you spend 1 tempo on the hero power to actually deal the damage that's normal, and then you lose 1 tempo because you have to use 2 mana. So that's a huge swing, difference between 5 and 1 for 1 mistake on your part. Like, it's just less punishing.
Right. And then essentially the third class that I think you should be picking up, like when you can't play as mage and you can't play as druid, I think you should be playing as rogue, because they have a ping as well. It's a little bit different because you get like 2 pings, right? You basically get 2 pings.
I don't think the 2 pings is necessarily the difference part, because you
Well,
just hit the button when you ping, and then you end up with
sure.
a dagger, right? It's just
Right,
like
right.
a
You end
pure
up with the
bonus.
dagger. Part of the reason why Rogue is a little bit different from these classes is just the speed in which Rogue plays and sort of like your priorities when you're playing Rogue as well. Like you can be a lot faster, or you can do a lot more crazier stuff with Rogue. And the ability to do a lot with Rogue is actually a hindrance in the like sort of in the early part of a development of a new player.
Hmm.
So I would say focus on these three classes at the very start. Mage and Druid definitely. Like if you're just starting off, just and you see one of these two classes,
Yeah.
just pick that. Make Rogue your third, and then once you get comfortable with these classes, then you can expand. And I want to talk about this a little bit. Like I think you should stay with these three classes for a
A very
decent
long
amount.
time. Like,
Yeah,
I think people are like, oh yeah, I played a couple runs with Druid, couple with Mage, couple with Rogue. I'm ready. No, you're not.
right. And once again, this is look, play whatever you want to play for fun. You know, like
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
just want to have fun, right? And Addict is like, oh, fun. We're talking about this again.
Why bring fun into this? This is not about fun. This is about how to best learn right now. I think that's our topic. We're not introducing a Z axis here of fun, because especially because it's different for each person. Like, I feel like it's up to you, the listener, to add fun to it. It's not up to us to tell you what's fun, right? That's a weird thing, right? You're listening to people to tell you what's fun. Instead, you should like figure out what's fun for yourself, and then some people have fun differently. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, I do want to drive home the point that like, and this is not just if like you're actually new to the game, or like you're new to Arena and you're wondering how to start.
Sure.
This is like I do this when a new meta happens, or I find myself slipping and I'm like, I just had like 10 runs that did not go so well. I think I'm missing something fundamentally in the meta. Like, I go back and you'll see me like on stream say things like, okay, I need to reset. We're gonna pick a mage or a druid this time. Like, I will do that because that helps me recenter myself whenever I think I lose track a little of the pace of the game, or of the meta, or like in the beginning of an expansion after I like test out each class. Maybe I'm like, I still don't feel like exactly. KFT was pretty easy to grasp, but for something like Ongoro, like when it came out with the standard, I was like, okay, let's pull back. I'm just gonna play mage and druid for a little bit. And you just saw me play a lot of like mage and druid and like rogue. um so I think this applies to anybody. Like if you feel yourself either slipping, or you feel yourself getting stuck in a rut or anything, like try this. Try to go back to class progression as a very basic thing before you start layering on things you're trying to learn.
Yeah. I think that's important to sort of um, like establish as well, that this isn't just used to learn the game, right? And
As it is used to learn the game, that's the point, but it's not just used for new players to learn the game.
true, true. And I have found out that I do this as well during new meta. I just kind of don't realize it. Like I guess I've gotten so used to this that I'm like, oh, okay, this is like I just play these classes and I prefer them in this order,
Hmm.
and I just sort of figure it out. But anyways, kind of the important question is, when are you ready to sort of pick up another class, right? And I think it's so. First of all, you have to get the basics down. You have to know the like all the cards, right? You have to know just sort of all the cards in the game if you're a new player, and you have to be very familiar with the meta. And what that means is you need to be familiar with sort of what you can expect on certain turns, just in terms of the tempo that can be generated, or you know, when you have sort of cards, like how much card advantage do you actually have, right? Like
Hmm.
and even sometimes when you're like quote up two cards in your hand, well, perhaps you know, like you're facing a warlock, or perhaps their minion on the board is really big versus your like one small minion, and then he's going to get like probably a 2 or 3 for 1. So just I think those are two important points to know. Like you have to know all of the cards essentially, and more important, you have to know what to expect on any given turn before you can comfortably and smoothly transition into a next class. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that one.
Yeah. it's I would just stay in a class as long as you can without getting bored or without thinking that like up until you hit like an actual plateau of like, oh, I think I know everything that's going on with like mage and druid and rogue, because there's so much to dig in those classes. Now obviously people are going to move away from those classes once they've, they figure out some stuff or they want to learn other stuff. Um and that's fine, but these three are really the classes that form your basis. Let's talk about what you move on to.
Sure. Yeah.
There's six other
So
classes. You're
there
done with
are.
mage, druid, or rogue, where you just got bored of them and you need to do something else, but like you still want to be on this like learning path, right? You don't want to totally screw yourself and play warrior. By the way, never play warrior.
Don't play warrior.
Never play
At least for
warrior.
now. Who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe we'll change. Like after the next expansion, we'll be like play warrior.
No.
But after mage and druid, you should be playing rogue, but we'll lump these three together
Mhm.
as the pink classes. Next, I think you should be moving on to paladin. Like now would be the time for paladin. I'll explain why, and then I'll see if you agree or disagree. But one of the first things that players sort of establish on the learning curve is sort of board presence and sort of like trades onto the board, right? And that is something that, like, even though you don't have a ping, like with paladins, it's kind of like a pseudo ping, right? Like the 1/1, a small percentage of the time will be a ping, so that covers a little bit of what you're lacking from the first
Mhm.
three classes. And second of all, paladins really sort of play off of your ability to see the board state well and also snowball onto the board, which should be skills that you have established just playing Hearthstone generally.
Yeah.
So the playstyle of Paladin favors, it favors you being on the board, and that's why I think it should be the next class.
Yep, I agree. And I think it's pretty. It's also one of the top classes usually, so it's an easy thing to expand into. I view it almost as like a guilty pleasure, where like if they don't offer me druid or mage or rogue, I get to play paladin because it's easier. Like that's why people like generally recommend you play paladin as one of your first classes, because it is easier. It's easier than druid. It's easier than mage even. I think it's definitely easier than rogue. But you don't learn as much. Like there's less to
No.
do as a paladin, there's less to think about. It's more about how you draw your cards in what order and what your opponents can do about it. It's really more of a kind of like relaxed class, I think. But yeah, the 1/1 being a ping the next turn, that really helps. And after that, I would actually go into shaman, which these days is probably weird because shaman sucks so much, so maybe don't go into shaman. But generally speaking, shaman was usually always a good pick because it does kind of the same thing. It bridges the gap between your ping and non-ping classes by having a totem, which is something you can put on the board at any time. Your opponent has to kill it to remove it, which like means damage is not coming to your face, and you get a little bit of a buffer. And 1 in 4 times you do just get that 1/1 also. So, and it also doesn't play like terribly differently than the other classes, right? Like it's almost like a mage class, right? It has like removals, it has weapons, it has minions. Like it's, for all of its weirdness and reliance on RNG, it's a pretty normal class.
Right. So would you recommend them moving to shaman after paladin now? Like,
I would, just so that I don't start like thinking about all that. Like if I'm in the early part of my progression, I would definitely recommend that. If I'm in like the 5-win area, I would not, because at that point you probably already know what you're getting from the shaman between your paladin and your other classes. Like
yeah.
you're not reinforcing anything. And in that case, I would move on to, you take warrior out, right? You don't learn anything by playing warrior these days. I mean, you could learn a lot of things, but it's really more like a test of what you've learned rather than a good environment to learn anything
Right.
in.
Yeah.
Instead, your last 3 classes, excluding warrior as a class, will teach you the following 3 things, and they're all very important, but depending on what you want to focus on more, right? Hunter obviously teaches you when to go face. Because if you go face immediately as a hunter, you're doing it wrong. Stop doing that. But you do need to learn when to go face, and you can test it and play around with it, and you will be punished very hard if you do it wrong as a hunter, and you will
Very
be
hard.
very hard. So that's one of those, like, like go in the deep end with this whole reach thing and sink or swim. Like if you go too early, you don't finish them off. If you go too late, you get killed before you finish them off. Like it's a whole balance thing. Warlock teaches you how to preserve your own health, which is kind of the opposite of what Hunter teaches you. So when you preserve your own health at all costs as Warlock, because that's how you get your card advantage and your absolutely insane hero power. But otherwise, just like the Hunter, you get no help on the board, even if you have 2 mana to spare. So you're starting to get that rigor of like, I don't have a ping to help. I don't have anything to help. And in this case, you don't even get to set the tempo. You kind of have to always be playing in response to your opponents. And you really get to, like as Warlock, you really get to know like when I need to use a removal and when I can just slam more minions on the board. Because you have a pretty simple goal for most Warlock decks, which is when you can, hold the board and prevent damage to get to your face. When you can't, set it up so you can flip the board really freaking quickly and take as little face damage as possible. So that's a very good like reverse Hunter skill. And the third one is Priest, which teaches you how to hold the board at all costs. Nothing else matters. Just like trying to get something onto the board. So of those, I think the easiest one to adjust to is probably Priest. Especially coming off of Paladin, which has similar goals. Although Priest just makes it like so much harder. It makes it easier for you to come back, but it makes it easier once you get rolling to snowball. But it's so much harder to actually like have something on the board to work with.
Yeah. So I actually had a different sort of progression after Paladin, and I think we're all in agreement. That's first, Mage, Druid, Rogue, and then you should move to Paladin.
Mhm.
I think that afterwards, and this is just for I think a better understanding of the game from learning, I would not recommend Shaman next. I think I would recommend Warlock next. Mostly just because past that point, after you've gotten used to Mage, Druid, Rogue, and Paladin, you have a good sense of the board. During this time, you should also be kind of learning and practicing card advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you should have a sort of that idea down. And Warlock is a good class after you have like a very solid foundation for those classes to really say, I'm going to work on like two things, like or I guess one thing and then a smaller subset set of it, which is card advantage, and more importantly, sort of using tempo to gain cards, right? Which I think is something that you can then extrapolate to all of the other classes.
Well, how?
Hmm?
How can you extrapolate that to all the other classes using tempo as cards?
Sure. For Warlock, it is very direct. It is the hero power, right? It is just the hero power. For other classes, it's mostly just getting advantageous trades onto the board, right? Like getting advantageous trades. And then after that, while they can't, like other classes, they can't like hero power to gain cards. What you can do past that point is not when you get good trades, then you can slow down a little to sort of get.
So how does Warlock help with that, rather than any other class?
I think Warlock helps just because of the fact that like you don't, with other classes, for example, you don't, with Mage, you have to draft like the Kabbalist Tome, right? You have to draft like the stuff in which you slow down later on to get like more fuel. With Warlock, you just have that in every single deck, right? That's just Warlock. Tempo out, and then you can tap for those.
So you're saying you're learning you're learning skills that are applicable to one archetype,
sure,
but you get to practice it every single time you play Warlock.
Exactly. Okay. So that's what I like about the Warlock afterwards, because I think you can do something like the Priest after Paladin because it's so applicable, but it seems like you're just going deeper down a certain path. Now it's harder, right? But you're sort of practicing the same skill.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, and then past that, I would just be like, like you've kind of categorized the rest of the classes, right? And I'm like, just sort of choose what you want at that point.
Well, I mean, I think Hunter is very similar to your Warlock example, because Hunter and Warlock are always opposed. If you're saying Warlock is going to help you master your control archetype, your card advantage control, like the attrition deck, right? Because you always have your hero power and you don't need to actually draft the deck. Well, Hunter will always help you with the aggro because you don't have to draft your reach. You will always have the reach.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then maybe at this point, you can just play the game, have fun with it, introduce that Z axis, and sort of implement these skills that you've been practicing. Now, when we say that, you should play this class to sort of hone a skill, it's not like you haven't been doing it before. It's just that skill will be sort of front and center, right? It will be a much bigger portion of the pie chart if you want to look at the pie chart of success for a certain class. And certainly it will sort of help you focus on this one aspect a little bit more. And then once you've mastered a skill, you can then use it for all of the classes. Like for Hunter, am I just focusing on face? No, although Twitch chat will say differently. Like part of the reason why you pick Hunter last is because the skill you pick up with Hunter is one that you really don't practice much with a lot of other classes, and with.
But it helps you improve all those other classes.
Yes, like we said at the very beginning of the beginners will go face. Medium, sort of medium.
Good players. You're good players.
Good players.
You're like
will trade.
Yeah, you're 4-5-1 players.
Really good players go face.
Yep.
Yeah, no, this is something I will keep on repeating, and it's just true. Like the really good players will identify and take more risks, right? Like walk closer to that edge.
Yeah, because there's always these face times where you're like, well, if I have 90% confidence, I should go face. If I have 80% confidence, I should not go face. And so when you're a pretty good player, you maybe have 70% confidence. And that's really good compared to a player who has no confidence and just doing things because they can. But that means you shouldn't go face in that situation because you're not distinguishing between the correct opportunities. And then once you get to a certain level of understanding, you're like, yes, this is, I will get really punished for this, but I'm very, very sure about what my setup for the game is.
Yeah. All right, so I think that's just the progression, and obviously just don't play Warrior.
Until Blizzard fixes Warrior, don't play it.
In all seriousness, what are the skills that you practice with Warrior? It's tempo, it's face, it's...
What we practice with Warrior is really the choosing, because there's a lot of Druid has choose one, right? Which is kind of a very direct way to do it. But every weapon, except for Fool's Bane, is a choice. You are always choosing with a Warrior, and your entire actual advantage in the arena is the difference between choosing when to play a minion or to set up a weapon even if you don't have a target. It's choosing when to use the weapon on face versus the weapon on a minion. It's these kinds of choosing options, right? And you'll get a good amount of that from playing Hunter, because you're choosing when to attack face, or right, Hunter has it almost the level below Warrior, where Warrior is much more reliant on the choosing. Hunter starts introducing a lot of those elements into your game of this is a very, very important decision. And because if you mess up and you go face and you shouldn't have, you're screwed, right? And with Warrior, if you went face and you shouldn't have, you're really screwed. There's no hero power to bail you out at that point.
Yeah, you can't fall back on it.
So that's Warrior, and it's not something you need in your game. It's something for really advanced players, and the class just sucks right now. So even really advanced players aren't really gonna get a ton of mileage out of Warrior. So just stay away from it for now. And that's why there's also an option to just stay away from Shaman too, because I wouldn't say it's a broken class, especially if you're not trying to get 7 wins per run and you're really just trying to go from 3 to 4 or 4 to 5. I think Shaman's probably still fine, but it's definitely on the weaker side right now. We put it for good players on the tier same as Warrior. It's a bit higher for not top but good players or average players. It would be much higher, but still. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Question from the GOAT. Before we go on to the question from the GOAT, I just want to give a really big shout out to all of our Twitch subs and everyone who came in and supported us during our sub drive over the past 2 weeks. We hit our goal of 700. We got the emotes out. So just thank you guys so much. It's a great show of support. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. I was not expecting so much support, but maybe that was just me being pessimistic.
I had
That
the
was just me.
faith. I had the faith. I set the 700 goal not as a reach goal, but as a, oh, we'll hit that kind of goal. So,
Yep.
but yeah, thank you guys so much. It really means a lot to us. And now, question from the GOAT.
Question from the GOAT. All right. Synergy picks are going to be leaving us at a certain point. Who knows when? But I think it would be a good time to ask, during the era of synergy picks, regardless of whether, which was the sort of correct pick, right? Like statistically correct pick, or the one that you're most likely to hit if you want to win, or
You mean
whatever.
the non-synergy picks?
Yeah, basically. So no like Tolvir Stone Shaper all of the time. What was your favorite go for broke strategy? Which synergy did you just like pushing all in with, right? Just in terms of fun. Like, we had stuff like Murlocs, Dragons, Death Rattles, Highlander, right? We had like Kazakis as well. There was Divine Shield synergy. We had Beast synergies. Which one did you like going all in with the most?
Okay. For win rate, going all in with something like very specific, like Dragon, was probably the best. Just because it has very limited downside compared to the other ones. But my favorite is always Beast. It's always Beast. There's just something like satisfying about hitting a Beast synergy.
With Druid or Hunter?
With Baba either, because remember I play Hunter in like total mid range or even late game mid range style, so I actually trigger my beast synergies and I play for my beast synergies. Not like you, where they're just like incidental, like, oh yeah, I have a beast, let's go.
That's true. That's true.
I actually like try to set it up the same way I would as a druid, and so both are equally beastly for me. Although druid obviously is the powerhouse right now, so you get a lot of mileage with druid, especially before they nerfed. Whatever that card is from 5 mana to 6 mana, the one that generates a whole bunch of 1/5 beasts.
Spreading Plague.
Yeah, Spreading Plague. Unleash the Crypt Lords.
Yeah, I will say my favorite go for broke strategy has to kind of be the Kazakis. Like Kazaks, and okay, it will have to be Priest in that because with Priest you can also get Raza the Unchained, right? And I think in one run I had Kazakis plus Raza, and it was just and I had a Shadow Form as well. That was just ridiculous. It was so freaking fun, and once you pick Kazakis, you're also you're very much on alert the rest of the draft, right?
Yeah.
In terms of once you pick Kazakis, you're just like, oh, like how do I weigh these? Like other picks, like do I pick the second good card or do I take this mediocre card? It just introduces like something interesting into the draft, and I just really like playing Kazakis Potion. That thing is insanely fun. So that's probably my favorite go for broke, because the other synergies are just not as fun. For example, like I saw someone in the chat saying, it's like, oh, I like the Divine Shield synergy. I'm like, so you just like to win, which is fine. But it's like, the Divine Shield
and the Kazakis is not just because you want to win. You do not take the best card in the synergy pool, not because you want to
win by blowing up everything.
Oh, okay.
Divine Shield synergy, quote unquote, is just like, oh, so you take the Rallying Blade and you take the Steward of Darkshire and you're good, which is good because they're like significantly above average cards, but I want a little bit of like spice in there. You throw the potion there, and it ends up being a lot of fun.
All right. So that's question from the GOAT. Question from the GOAT brought to you by our Patreons. Patreon.com/grinninggoat. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. That is how we keep the light on here at the Lightforge. If you are thinking of contributing, it is patreon.com/grinninggoat. Thank you again. Let's move on to something with Divine Shield. Card good bad. we are going to do a card good bad, and we're doing Paladin today. That's the run that's coming up, so this is a very fitting one because it is the best card in KFT for the Paladin, and it is called Righteous Protector. 1 mana, 1/1 with Taunt and a Divine Shield. So it's 135 on our tier list, which is very good. And it's a little bit of controversy when it first came out of just how good it is, but we always had to rate it super high, and I think it's bore itself out as between the synergy picks of the Rallying Blade and the existence of Righteous Protector. Paladin has held on to its top tier status from Ungoro when a lot of people thought it would drop a tier.
This card really bothers me. I can't. It's won way too many games for being so small, and it's just like the taunt. Or anytime you have a pretty good card, a pretty good cheap card, and you just add something on top of that, it just ends up being ridiculous, right? And taunt is not nothing. For some cards, you're sacrificing
a stat. Like, think about Senjin, what used to be one of the best neutral cards in the game.
Yeah, you're sacrificing a stat for that, and that's on Senjin. That's on a 4 mana card, right? And you were okay sacrificing a stat. This for Righteous Protector, like, we're talking about one stat, or essentially like the lack of taking away of one stat on a 1-drop.
Yep.
That's insane.
Yep.
So this card has just completely blown me out, and I'm not. It's not like an exaggeration. This card has blown me out way too many times because of the ways it has forced me to interact or not interact with their board.
Yeah, like, it's one thing that requires 2 hits before you get through for 1 mana. You can then add another taunt onto it if you have it in your hand. You can protect anything with this card. Or even if you're not protecting stuff, remember this is Paladin, right? Like, a lot of the times your goal is make sure your opponent has no minions on the board he can buff. Well, once this guy comes out, unless you got a board clear, you're gonna get something on the board left, even if you're, trading well. So it serves the 2 functions. One is protect the, let's say, Grime Street Enforcer or something like that, right? That will repeatedly get you value every turn, or the thing that's been Blessing of Wisdom or something like that. Or 2, it's make sure you have something left on the board to buff. And that's how Paladin wins. It's not a very technical game plan, and it's not a very difficult to execute game plan, and this card just makes it a lot easier to execute.
Yeah, and you will see this from expansion to expansion, from meta to meta. Any of the board-centric or aggressive classes that gets a strong 1-drop, especially, or like a strong 2-drop, they're going to be good, right? And Righteous Protector is just one of the craziest ones. Like, it's so good of a 1-drop.
And it's both 1 and a 2-drop because it's Paladin. Remember, I always say, like, in Paladin, 1-drops are 2-drops. Because you play the 1-drop, then you hero power. You basically have a 2-drop. Like, unless you're looking to be so aggro that you want both an actual 1-drop and an actual 2-drop, for Paladins, having a 1-drop is good enough to have the same as having a 2-drop for any other class.
Yeah. So, especially with a class like Paladin, in which they do want to snowball, right? They have their own snowball mechanics, and they have the neutral snowball mechanics as well. This just kind of like gets them so over tempoed and puts the opponent in such a difficult position on turn 1. Or even later on, it's just kind of like on turn 5, you can put down a 4-drop and you can put this down. How much mana or like do they have to use to just sort of like hit past this, right? Like, it'll always be really freaking good for the Paladin whenever they play this. Like, I can't really think of many situations in which it gets sort of under the value that it should get.
Yep. All right, so that's Righteous Protector, and let's move on to our final topic, Class Talk Paladin. Paladin still on top. Question, still on top after synergy picks leave?
I don't know. Well, first of all, there could be other changes as well.
Okay,
right?
so let's assume no other changes. Just synergy picks leaving.
think it won't be as strong because right now it's really easy to get a Rallying Blade in the
Mhm.
first two picks, right? Like really, really easy. And Rallying Blade is just ridiculous. So it's going to lose that. But Paladins still play in a very advantageous way for the meta. They
Mhm.
have ways to get onto the board early, for example, with Righteous Protector on turn one. And then they just snowball off of it. And they have some big cards now, whether in the class, like Grime Street Protector, or just through neutral cards like Bone Mare. And they have some of the best ways to build off of their early game lead. So I think Paladins will be just fine. Like even without the sort of significantly increased chance to get Rallying Blade in the first two picks.
Yep. I agree. I don't think Paladin is really going anywhere. It's like when they're like, "Oh my God, they're nerfing Druid." I'm like, "Nope, Druid's still top tier." Like, not even a question, right? Like, these things are just not big enough to knock these classes off the perch. Um, so yeah, so our class tier list is still Druid, Paladin, Rogue in some order on tier 1, followed by Warlock, Hunter, and what's the class I'm forgetting?
I don't know. I'm forgetting it too.
Okay. Well, it's not the priest. Oh, it's not the priest. It's not, which is the tier after that. It's not shaman and warrior, which make up the bottom. Oh, mage. That's right. You know that class, the most popular class in the arena.
It's so forgotten.
So easily forgettable. Yeah. So that makes up the second tier, and so that's our overall class tier list. And yeah, I think we covered a lot of the classes now. And then next week, if there is a patch, we'll talk about it. If there is no patch, we'll go deeper into back into the deep fried metas that we've been doing the past couple weeks, and really drill down on more of this KFT, how to improve and how to play a fairly technical on the board game, which is what KFT is promoting these days. All right. That's it from us for this week. Until next week, this is Adwikta.
This is Merps. Good luck in the arena, guys.